Hi, I am Viljami Lappalainen and this is my vlog. I wanted to continue my previous video about how what where I talked about how I view world philosophically, that we are sort of minds in a world and how we only ever can access what is within our mind, and anything we observe, the observations themselves become part of our experiential world. So we never really know what the world itself is in like. We only have evidence about it. And I compared it to having these Bayesian probability distributions that are updated by evidence. And then I talk about different kinds of knowledge that we might have, like, well, observe evidential knowledge, like what has been seen, and these probability distributions as a distributional knowledge about how likely some person actually thinks something is, and what are how likely different things are according to that person. That kind of knowledge was sort of algorithmic knowledge or procedural knowledge, how to do things, be it calculating probability distribution or binding books or whatever. Fourth kind of knowledge was sort of consensual knowledge, something that we act as if it is true and thus sort of have reason to assume it there is such thing in a way. We act as if they are nations, and that by that they become things. So we can have sort of knowledge about sort of imaginary things that affect the world, which is sort of funny. Anyway, so I want to talk about these different kinds of knowledges more, because I find them fascinating, and I wanted to use how we can organizations as examples, because I feel that different kinds of organizations can produce knowledge of these different kinds. For example, journalists can photograph something, and by that they have provide others evidence about something. They provide evidential knowledge, which can affect what others consider to be plausible or possible or unlikely. So then I feel that there can be, by studying these things thoroughly, people can provide different possible models and share how likely they think they are. Many scientific models essentially are this. We study science, have many different theories that are based on certain kinds of evidences. So we often are provided in a way this uh, model knowledge or probability distributional knowledge, how likely something is. And so there are organizations can produce something like that too. What is thought to be true? Then the third kind of knowledge, how to do things. That seems straightforward. They are, it is often something we can buy books about how to do something. So it's writers, for example, or bloggers, or very many people, teachers, are in a way providers of, sometimes even creators of this kind of procedural knowledge of how to do things. Then the fourth kind of knowledge, sort of which I think is foundational for creating organizations, this sort of consensual knowledge in a way, how to organize things in a way. It too can be uh, creative in how we can form fantasies or ideas about how to do things, ideals, ideologies. We can create them, and there are many people that create this kind of communiques of how to think about things, creating imagined communities even. And I think that each of those sort of kinds of knowledge is useful for thinking about the world. I mean, we often sort of, when we act on a world, we often sort of supplant what was with what is known. In a way, we don't necessarily need to know what world exactly was before if we know proper procedures for changing world into something that is known. I don't actually know what was where this apartment building where I'm living in, what there was before. Because it is in a way some sort of unnecessary thing. Because now, when there is this building where I live, I know enough about what is currently. So our actions in the world can change it in a way that we later know how world is by virtue of having changed it into known quantity. And that is fascinating. Actually, yet another point of view, in a way, how to think about knowing. I think it is actually very enlightening to think about how we can look out, for example, from balcony to see world and try to discern what we could learn if we only limited ourselves to what we can observe from that said balcony. We can see many things, obviously, depending on where we live, but using that information in a some organized way is what really affects what we can know. Perhaps we could like start observing whether uh, how how days change, how bright or dark it is outside, how cold, warm. Perhaps we could be able to observe if there are cars or people outside. There are many things we could sort of draw our attention to, and then by structuring that possible evidential knowledge by some procedure, and to give us an idea how what could explain what we are seeing, and then we could have these different probabilities for these ideas about what explains what is seen, and that's sort of fascinating for me. So it is at least interesting idea too, because we are necessarily limiting ourselves to certain points of view when we are trying to understand the world. I mean, the if you are trying to study human psychology through questionnaires about what they are feeling or how they view themselves acting, then you are limiting yourself severely. It is not necessarily obvious if it is less or more limited than watching outside the world from balcony, because they are just differently limited forms of gaining information about world, through which we can then gain this evidence that will then change our beliefs about these different probability distributions of models. So, thinking about the world as sort of that we gain knowledge about world following different procedures and using different sensors is a very general way of thinking, and that is why I want to try to use it to elucidate how to think about world and ourselves in a world. But I think uh, I don't know quite what to say next. I mean, maybe later next video I will continue on something. And thank you if you listen to me, and I hope you'll have a wonderful day. Bye.